Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. It's time for the tier list recap for Hatsu 2024. I needed a couple of days on the fainting couch after what Ura did to Ryuden, but we're back and ready to take a look back at these picks. Starting at the top, S and A tier. Everyone lived up to their billing here. Terunofuji, obviously correct. Kaiju be Kaiju, he came in, he was there for the whole time, 13-2, won the U-Show, exactly what you expect. Kirishima, keeping him at S tier. I know if you're especially a Kachi Clash player, it looks like he should go to A tier because he obviously wasn't a must pick. Terunofuji did better, but in any game where you weren't picking between specifically Kiri and Terunofuji, or Kiri and Kotonowaka, which I think might only be stable masters as far as I know, Kiri was the man. Kiri was an absolute top selection and you wanted him everywhere you could get him, so he's still an S tier pick. Best Ozeki, best everything except those two guys. Hoshoryu, obviously he's a good Ozeki, he had a knee injury, still got his 10 wins, he's always going to be at this level until he actually starts breaking down. Whether he can rise above this we have yet to see, but A tier all the way, that was correct. Kotonowaka, switch him to S. I put him at A tier not really because I doubted him, but just because Daisho will sometimes really pop off, and it was like, well, Kotonowaka should get like 11 wins and maybe Daisho could compete with him. No, Kotonowaka was the best pick. I did not give him enough credit for the gap that he's created between himself and Daisho, and I really should have. He has clearly bypassed Daisho in skill, size, strength, all of that. He's going to be a top pick for a long time to come. Onosato, A tier, exactly right. I said it was going to be Kota Shoho who was most likely to keep up with him, and he did keep up with him for the most part, but then there were three other guys, Takanosho, Oho, and Onosho, in that vicinity who were just one win behind him. Onosato absolutely dominated everybody until he got to the top, except for his loss to Onosho, which was just, it looked like his coaches were like, hey, this guy charges in with his face, he's exactly the kind of guy you gotta stand in there against and see what you can do, and Onosho probably hit him harder than he's ever been hit in his life. But he is physically the dominant force we're expecting. He should be around mid Maegashira next time. I expect him to take kind of an Atami Fuji arc. He's going to do really well next time, get into the joy, and that's when the questions are going to start. But for now, he lived up to the hype, 11-4, great job, A tier, 100%. And then Asanoyama, tied for the most wins in that middle part of the division, even though he missed 4 matches with an injury. Obviously, the class of that part of the division. It was just unfortunate circumstance that kept him from competing for the U-Show itself, although if he had had the kind of Sanyaku opponent some of these other guys had, maybe he would have only had like 10 wins anyway, who knows. But he was obviously above and beyond everybody else around him, and his injury woes came to play as well. So S injury tier was right on the money. B tier, 2 good here, 1 meh. Daisho, winning record machine until proven otherwise. He's just gonna keep doing it. You might get unlucky and he'll go 7-8, but now that it's between him and Wakamoto Haru, it's actually going to be an interesting choice at Sekiwake. Atami Fuji, gotta drop him to C-. 6 wins. It looked like he came out of those hard early days mostly unscathed because he went from 0-4 to 4-4, but that makes his struggles the rest of the way that much more concerning. 4 matches against new opponents, but he only beat Shodai. The way his size and his skill dominates against lesser competition made it easier to think he wouldn't have that many struggles outside the Sanyaku, but Ura, Tamawashi, and Nishikigi put the lie to that. And let's be honest, I said Ura and he was Sanyaku, but come on, you know what I'm talking about. Kota Shoho, 9-6. I told y'all this is what was gonna happen. Apart from Takara Fuji on the last day, his losses all came to guys who finished with at least 9 wins. Now, I still don't like his chances in the middle of the division, but at least it looks like he's going to be competitive and like he'll stop spinning his wheels in the double-digit ranks. I don't think he's obvious D tier at Maegashira 7 or 8 like Ichi Yamamoto. I don't think he's at all a given to have a winning record, but he at least looks like a guy who can put up a fight for it now. Alright, B injury tier, and now we start getting into the tragedy. Takakeisho, He had 2 solid wins to start, then obviously was injured when he started backpedaling against Wakamoto Haru. I thought he got hurt then, but it turns out he got injured against the Tommy Fuji the match before, which makes his start in the Waka fight that much more impressive, really. Obviously, he's still a good Ozeki if his health maintains, but calling his health shaky right now would be an overstatement. Takayasu, 2 wins, double Kyujo, which is rare. It was easy to see all this as a possibility. Really, where I got this wrong and called Takayasu a better pick than Ura was just because I thought even if he got hurt, he'd last longer than this. It just fell apart real early. This Banzuke coming up is going to be a little bit weird. Even though he only had 2 wins at Komusubi, I think is very plausible he only drops to like Maegashira 5. But if he drops back to Maegashira 7 or so, hey, you've got a new easy pick for the middle of the division again. Meisei and Onisho. They looked healthy, they got 9 and 10 wins respectively. B tier is right on target for the relatively healthy versions of these guys. Going forward, if Meisei looks healthy, he probably is healthy enough that you don't have to put him on the injury list, but Onisho will probably always be that little bit of a risk, especially when he goes up in rank, kinda like Takayasu. Endo. Switch him to C injury tier. He started September with 3 losses before he went on a tear, and I had him at B injury tier because I thought he might need time to warm up, but could potentially do something similar here. But man, it was different from the start. He can go forward against opponents not big enough to stonewall him, but his lateral movement looks completely shot. He's kinda at that Matakayumi level where this might just be who he is now. Sometimes he looks a little better, sometimes a little worse. The difference is that Matakayumi is just better, so he can hang out around mid Maegashira, and if Endo stays in the game, he may consistently battle just to get out of Juryo, or just stay there like a couple of those Chios. Endo should stick in Makuuchi for 1 more Basho, but if he flops out to Juryo and then doesn't look like he can make it back, I think he might retire. C+ tier. Wakamoto Haru. Now, I did say he had an 85 to 90% chance of a winning record, but he made it look like not even a question. It's worth pointing out, however, the path he took to his 10 wins. This is a chance to go through how Sumo gets scheduled. It's gonna take a minute though, so stick with me. First off, props to him for finally getting over the hump against Teruno Fuji. He's always a handful for the kaiju, but he did so well, a bunch of people, including some of y'all watching this, don't lie, called it the end for Teru after that loss. And his win against Kota no Waka was absolutely legit. But now we have to look at his good fortune. 1. Takakeisho and Takayasu both dipped out of the Basho immediately after fighting him because they were way less than 100% going into those matches. 2. He's a terrible matchup for Ura. So where I figured walking away from the Sanyaku at 3 and 5 would be pretty good, he wound up 5 and 3 thanks to those couple of high-level wins, 1 very good matchup, and some very fortunate timing. After that, he got Midori Fuji, who was always going to be a good matchup and the type of opponent that made a winning record look very plausible. Now comes the lesson on how sumo scheduling works. When you're high Maegashira, you're done with your Sanyaku matches, and you have a good record, you generally get put against other guys with good records. But you don't necessarily have to fight the best guys. Those often get put against Sanyaku opponents, which means you end up with second-tier contenders from lower ranks. That's a pretty good position to be in, but even so, there are usually guys doing well scattered across the Banzuke, so the schedule doesn't necessarily get much easier. In this case though, from day 10 to 13, he got to face 4 double-digit rank opponents. This is highly unusual, and happened because the only guys in the top 10 ranks with more than 5 wins after day 9 were him and Asanoyama. Everyone else was kicking ass way down the line. Asanoyama would have seen all the contenders if he'd stayed in, but it was just at that moment when he took his sprained ankle and went home. So the top guys ended up with Sanyaku opponents, and Waka got the secondary contenders like Oho. If Waka was ranked down at like 11 or 12 in there, we'd expect a huge score from him, so it's no surprise he blasted 3 of the 4 low rankers he fought. And the fact Kota Shoho was the one who beat him made me feel really smart, so hooray! He finished up losing to Abi, who's a terrible matchup for him, and beating Nishikigi, who's a great matchup for him. Essentially, he did exactly what we should have expected against the opponents he faced. He had a couple nice wins and then beat a bunch of guys we would normally expect him to beat, or, at least in their injured states with Keisho and Papa Bear. But if he had lost to either Teru or Kota no Waka and been just 4 and 4 after day 8 instead of 5 and 3, he wouldn't have been quite as obvious a choice to face those backup contenders, and his schedule might have looked considerably different. Sumo fate walks a very thin line sometimes. In this case though, it worked out really well for him. Abi, right on the money. He did it the hard way, but he got his 8 wins. Gonoyama, drop him to D tier. Short version, I thought he'd be more competitive at this level, and if he wasn't, he'd be able to pick up wins against struggling competition late. He got kinda unlucky towards the end with Asanoyama coming back and slotting in against him, and then catching Takanosho having a fantastic basho in day 15. But the way he got bowled into the crowd by both Teru and Kotonowaka, dude's gotta find something more to add to his game plan, or this is just gonna happen again the next time he gets up here. Tobizaru, pretty much a rerun in November. Struggled against the top guys, dropped a match or two he might not normally, and got unlucky with Hoshoryu's Kyujo, leaving him stuck against Kotonowaka on day 15. And at 7 and 8, it took all that to deny him a winning record. He probably won't lose rank for March, in which case expect him to be C+ again and probably finish with either 7 or 8 wins. Nishikigi, same boat as Tobizaru, except he only had to deal with 2 Sanyaku instead of 5, and he showed out when he needed to for his 8 wins. Of course, now he'll either be Komasubi or Maegashira 1 East, so we'll see how that goes. Kinbozan, 7 and 8, although it was a surprisingly unimpressive 7 and 8. He got the wins he was supposed to, but he's like Gonoyama in that he can't keep showing the exact same sumo all the time and hope that's going to get him further up the charts. People are reading him, they see what he do, and they're finding ways to beat him. Hokuseiho, injured early, so even though he looked like he was going to have a pretty bad tournament, it's hard to say how it would have gone. You look at his win over Meisei, where Meisei clearly knew what to do but just couldn't physically do it, and really, Hokuseiho just ends up with as many wins as he has opponents who also can't physically do it. Without the schedule of a full basho, it's impossible to say where he would have ended up, but it definitely wasn't trending up. Mitakeumi, drop him to C-. This was a little optimistic, but I didn't figure he would fall apart as quickly as he did. He also got a little unlucky with the schedule in that he clearly struggles now against guys who just want to hit him, and he got a lot of those along the way. He can still do okay if he's able to match up with a lot of grapplers, I think, but even then, some of them will just hit him if they think that's what's gonna work. Tamawashi, 8 wins despite getting unlucky with his late schedule. The overall situation was so bad that he got scheduled way up against Tatami Fuji when he was only 5 and 3, Wakamoto Haru when he was 6 and 3, and then in Ozeki when he was 7 and 3. It's not that that never happens, but it's rough when you get dragged that far up from Maegashira 10 before you even have your Kachikoshi locked in. Then he got stuck against Onosato at the end. It was a very strong performance overall, and considering what Banzuke movement looks like for March, it might be really fortunate he only got 8 wins instead of 9 or 10. Miyogiryu, drop him to D. Him and Endo are essentially in the same spot, obviously beat up after long sumo careers, but looking far worse physically than expected in this basho. It would be one thing if he had a lot of unfavorable matchups, but he could just not move the way we've seen from him in the past, and if he can't get his legs back in order, it may not matter that he'll be near the bottom of the division next time. Takara Fuji, drop to C-. I said I was putting him in C+ purely on the basis of old man's stubbornness, and he was 1 win short of that stubbornness keeping him in the division. And there is an outside chance he could stick around, but the old outweighed the stubborn this time. C- tier. I am still being way too nice to some of these guys. Hokuto Fuji. He got off to a great start all things considered. He lost to the healthiest version of Takayasu, and he lost to the top 3 guys in the rankings, but he beat everybody else. That knee injury looked kinda disastrous though, so, we'll have to see what kind of shape he's in come March. Shodai, drop to D. Maegashira 4 West is at the edge of the joy, and he had 4 Sanyaku opponents, but nobody who can run through the Yokozuna like he did has any excuse for only picking up 3 wins the rest of the way at his rank. By the end of the Gonoyama match, if not sooner, he looked like he just didn't know what to do anymore. Ryuden and Shonen Umi. Drop them both to D, although something clearly wasn't physically right with either of them. Given that several guys through the ranks missed matches with the flu, I wonder if that was impacting them, although if it was clearly impacting them at different times. At least Shonen Umi was able to finish 3-1 after his god-awful start. The highlight of Ryuden's tournament was the way he lost to Ura. I mean, I'm here for it, but that's pretty bad. Hirata Umi. He looks better dealing with the bigger guys, but he's about to hit the joy and oh boy, that's gonna go all kinds of wrong. Enjoy the moment, kid. Sadano Umi. 6-9 in a spot where it looked like he might very well go 6-9. I'll give him the unlucky tag insofar as 8 of his 9 losses were to guys who finished with 9 or more wins, And the 9th loss was to Churinaumi, who just beats his ass generally. But apart from Tamawashi, he only beat the Struggle Bus riders. If you could have seen his schedule before the Basho, this might well have been the easiest record to predict of anyone's, and you'd probably get most of the wins and losses right too. Oho. Alright, fine. He goes to B tier with his 10 wins. Short version, good Oho decided to make an appearance. Take away the guys he's no match for on his best day, Onosato, Waka, and Kodo, and he was 10-2. That's what he should be capable of against those guys on a regular basis. Is this the start of him being at that level consistently? Who the hell knows? Churinaumi, 7-8. This was pretty much right on. He showed a lot of fight, but these guys are on another level and he'll need something extra to keep up. At least we can figure he'll probably stick to the fringes of the division rather than constantly yo-yo in and out. Shimazu Umi, bump this man up to C+. Pretty much got the expected schedule and fought at the expected level, but his nice wins against Kodoshoho and Oho made the difference. C injury tier. Tsurugisho. I don't know, man. Dude spent the first 6 days looking like a basket case, but that tanked his schedule to a more manageable level, right? Then he loads up on favorable matchups, you add in a gift from Ichi Yamamoto's atrocious game plan execution, and a nice win against Kinbozan, and suddenly he finishes 9-6 again. Unfortunately, he's about to land in the Maegashira 5 or 6 range, and a rough start will not grant the same level of benefit next time. Takano Sho. Hey, he seems to be feeling okay. Technically, I guess I should call him B or B injury tier, but the dude is coming off a fresh knee injury and he'd gone Kyujo twice since the last time he even had more than 8 wins in a Basho. You'd have to huff toxic levels of copium to have thought 10 wins was a reasonable prediction before the Basho. All the same, hey, props to him, he did a great job. Tomokaze, foot no worky. He's a hell of a warrior, but that is just too much of a weakness to hide against most of these guys. D tier. Well, we nailed all of these, huh? By a miracle of fate, they're even in record order. If you followed the community posts on the channel, you saw the tale of Ura told over 15 days and his epic heroism at the end of the Basho. Short version is, he struggled when he was expected to struggle, then came back against those he was expected to come back against. But as a Komusubi, there aren't enough matches after the Sanyaku run to make up for those losses. Everyone else was completely in over their heads at their respective ranks. No need to really pile on here. And that's the tier list. This one turned out pretty well, pretty accurate. We'll see in the future if this was a one-off or if I'm actually getting halfway decent at this. Congratulations to Kota Nowaka on his official promotion to Ozeki. Special yeets are being worked on. Again, if you have somebody you want to see in the next breakdown, let me know. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.